Welcome to Work from the Inside Out, a podcast that highlights real-life stories, practical strategies, and best practices for transitioning your career from unhappiness and dissatisfaction to fulfillment, meaning, and joy. Now here is your host, career and executive coach, Tammy Guler-Loeb.
Hey, everybody. I am so excited to introduce my guests today. And both of them are former guests individually on this podcast, but they're coming together today in a really special way. Blake and Gen Georget lead the Roundtable Storytelling Academy, which offers a series of transformational online courses that help participants to find their superpowers and articulate their origin story so they can step into their purpose and redefine the relationship they currently hold to the narrative of their lives. Corey began his storytelling career as an actor, starring in one of the 50 greatest Super Bowl ads of all time. In 2006, Corey created Roundtable Companies, also known as RTC. Corey spearheaded the conversion of best-selling business books into comic books with authors like Tony Hsieh, Marshall Goldsmith, Chris Anderson, and Robert Cialdini. That effort landed him in the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, USA Today, and in Wired, Inc., and Forbes magazines. RTC's clients have included Microsoft, Workday, Magoosh, Zappos, and ADP. Gen Georget is an executive editor at RTC and a successful author in her own right. She is the co-author of Gathering Around the Table with Earthkind's CEO, Carrie Warburg Block. Jen's own book, Solace, A Journal of Human Experience, was named a 2020 Book of the Year for the Ottawa Faces Magazine Awards. Jen's writing and photography have been featured in The Good Mother Project, Oprah.com, Simplify Magazine, Her View from Home, The Good Men's Project, Real Leaders Magazine, Addicted to Success, and she boasts her own online community of more than 35,000 followers. Together, Corey and Jen and RTC are on a mission to share just how powerful telling your story can be. Please join me in welcoming Corey Blake and Gen Georget. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you, Tammy. It was so lovely to listen to you read that. My face started hurting from smiling so long.
Yes, well, that's great. Well, now you can relax. So, Corey and Jen, tell us, how did this come about, this Roundtable Storytelling Academy? I know it has a rich history, so take us back to some of the beginnings and how it's developed. And I will also share with our audience that I have had the privilege of taking one of the courses in the Academy, and I just recently finished it, and it was a deeply rich, rewarding, and how do I say this? Enjoyable is such a, it was enjoyable and yet rewarding. And I don't know how to say it. It was a great experience and I'm still processing it. It was wonderful. And I already loved storytelling. Now I know myself differently and better in so many ways. But I loved also being in class with you and having you lead me through the course and really definitely helping me see myself through my own narrative in ways I hadn't before. So I thank you for that. So now we'll get back to the question I actually just asked you.
What a gift, though. I love hearing how it impacts you. I enjoy that it's hard to find the words. It's
funny that it's hard to find the words when I was just in a storytelling class, but
something I love about that. Well, I'll give you the quick origin behind how it came to be. I mean, in many ways, it was accidental. We had, before the pandemic, I was speaking at a Conscious Capitalism chapter event. and I was leading a group of about 100 people through a workshop on magnetizing your purpose. And it was a very experiential workshop where people ended up getting vulnerable and unearthing a piece of themselves that felt new and alive. And at the end of it, a gentleman came up and waited in line to talk to me, which was lovely. And he didn't have a business card on him, and I had run out of cards, but he said, we're working on something, and I think you and I should talk. And, when that happens and nobody has a card, like the chances that you're going to get together and actually have a conversation are pretty minimal. Yeah. And thankfully, it still manifested. And he was in the process. He had a 100-year-old company, and he was in the process of taking his 250 sales agents and converting them to people who could collect stories from people, as opposed to collecting data and information and then selling. And he said, I think you might be the person who can help us to do that. So I started traveling out to Dallas specifically to go and train his staff. And we were making progress, working through resistance, because these were traditional salespeople who, really looked at their people on the phone as targets, and money to be made. And here I was, like trying to encourage them to see these people as beautiful humans with sacred stories. And we're in that wrestling back and forth. And then the pandemic hits, and I can't travel to be there anymore. And so we said, well, why don't we create an online course? And I had a hypothesis. If I could help each of the individual agents to share their story in such a way where they realized that they were heroic, and then I could share and show them that everyone else in their class was heroic, that maybe we could get them to take the leap to realizing that must mean everyone they're on the phone with is heroic and deserves a different kind of attention and care.
What came up with heroic? I mean, how did you think about that sort of label as heroic? Where did that come from?
Mm-hmm. I mean, we've been working with the hero's journey for a long time.
Okay, Joseph
right?
Campbell
And I'm a part of the Stegan Leadership Academy out of Dallas, and I'm in my fourth year now of a class called the Dragon's Gap, which is like an advanced leadership course where we're talking about the hero's journey really frequently and relating it to our own growth as a leader. So it's very top of mind for us in the work that we do. But this iteration of it was something new, and that hypothesis was new, and we watched it work, and then once that was proven, then we could teach them how to listen differently and how to co-create with a storyteller and how to ask powerful questions that help someone tell a version of the story they'd never told before, and they've collected over 1 million stories now.
Oh my gosh!
So
Whoa.
That worked. But what was most beautiful, I think, to us was, while the business metrics were phenomenal, when we would ask them about the impact, they would share with us things like, I talk differently to my spouse. My kids want to talk to me now, right? I've been promoted because I am more confident and more engaged at work. And those things made us say, okay, we have to take that portion of the course and bring it to more people. And that was the impetus for where we're at.
Wow. Oh, that is powerful. I mean,
unexpected.
I'm just envisioning, this huge group of sales agents with all that resistance, and how you managed to break through that. That
still do. It's still a challenge. Jen,
sure.
Jen leads a lot of, we do classes for them on an ongoing rolling basis with, they put in 25 agents at a time, and Jen's been leading those for quite a while. And you want to speak, Jen, a little bit to what that experience is like?
Well, I think the first thing that I'd like to mention is that I found it really interesting hearing Corey say that it happened by accident.
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't use that word. I would probably say it happened very organically, very divinely, if you will, like a life's work finally coming together in a way that was always intended to be, right? And that's the hero's journey. We go through these roads of trials, and cross these thresholds and answer these calls to adventures, and it tends to happen in really unexpected ways. So I don't really believe there's anything accidental about it at all. Perhaps rather a perfect storm coming together that enabled a great deal of creativity.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of pushing back against resistance, I think what I observe the most is a control issue. And maybe I shouldn't label it as an issue. Just as humans, right? We really want our story to look and feel and sound a certain way. And I don't think people as a whole are used to being asked to hold themselves in a place of heroism. They're not often asked to share about challenging parts of their lives, especially in a workplace.
Mm-hmm.
And so they come up against a resistance of, well, there's so many of them. There's the resistance of, do I actually want to share this with my colleagues? And then there's the resistance of, do I even want to hear the words myself? There's the resistance of just, what does it mean when you say something out loud and you're asked to reframe it in a different way? So there's a very almost predictable rhythm that comes through the course now, where there's a peak of anxiety that happens, and then you can watch people as they share their stories, which is one of the really pivotal pieces of the course, is having everyone actually share their stories with their classmates. So you're not just learning it, but you actually speak it to your cohort, and you can physically watch their body language change as they're telling the story and over the course of that time together. And watching the body language of everyone else on the call as they tend to lean in towards their computer versus leaning away, which I think is what so many of us expect to happen when we share things about ourselves that maybe are, woven with shame or guilt or anger, even. So it takes a while at times to get people on board and to trust the process.
Sure, absolutely. And this isn't your typical sales training.
No, it is not. No, it is not.
Yeah, and I often get that question, like, why are we doing this?
I bet.
Again? And I try to tell them over and over again, the best way for you to understand what your caller is going through is for you to have to go through it yourself. Right? There's no way to deeper connect through empathy and compassion if we've been in a similar situation. When you have strangers call you and you're asking them to share stories about their days in college and whatever that experience was like, giving them the experience of the discomfort of having to share and knowing how well it can be received brings a degree of connection to that call already because they've been through a similar experience.
Even the words, empathy and compassion, those are words people don't use in the workplace very much.
Sure.
I think more recently we're hearing those words more and more as we're at least attempting to come out of the pandemic, although it doesn't look like we're coming out of it anytime soon. But I think that some of the topics that we've been talking about lately around work, those words seem to be coming up more. But typically, and especially when you started doing this, I can imagine that that some people were probably hearing you say those words and they'd probably look at you like, huh? What? Right. What do you mean?
You're trying to take something that's very transactional and you're trying to make it relational.
Yeah.
You're trying to insert humanity into that interaction in a way that might not have existed before. And relational interactions are really hard to measure. Right?
And yet I would imagine though that there were I think about it in the context of this initial story that you're sharing around working with people in sales. They understand how important relationships are.
They do, but they approach them. When I started working with them,
yeah,
it was very, the tendency was very transactional, kind of, hey buddy, what's the weather like kind of chit chat, and to break their chit chat habit so that they could get into far more profound conversations quickly. Because we're talking about, the goal is have someone on the phone to get their story, let them tell their story over a 15-minute period. There's not a lot of time, to stay relational, to stay at a higher surface level. The beauty of, Jen, you say, relational is hard to measure. However, in the beauty of the sales world is when you've got some sales agents who go through a program like this and double their sales, well, then the other ones start paying attention.
Yeah.
And say, right. and start to understand, okay, getting someone to want to buy this product, it becomes a lot easier if they've shared something in a way they've never shared it before, that was very moving and meaningful to them to say out loud. And then you say, and you can own this so that if you want to come back to this moment, you can have it to hold in your hand. That's way, way different than, if it's the same story that you've told around the dinner table a dozen times, and yet you tell it one more time, you don't need to own that. You just don't. So there was some shift that needed to happen. And we did need some metrics, and thankfully the organization was large enough that it does measure those things. And we could demonstrate very quickly that this was having a substantial impact.
And yet Corey, when you started having these conversations with this business owner, this 100-year-old company, which I imagine was steeped in tradition and probably some very, I would imagine some very solid beliefs, let's say, you had no idea where this was going to land or go.
No, it was very much an experiment. By that time, I had some really strong experience with creating deeply profound connective moments, right, that I was doing from the stage a lot at the time. And so I went into, one of the first things I did when I went into that organization, they brought in 40, 50 people for an initial training. And we spent the first hour playing Vulnerability is Sexy. But we played it in a way where after people would respond to the prompts, I would ask permission. Can I ask a question, a follow-up? And I would help them layer into something where everyone else in the room would be like, I've known you for 10 years and I feel like I just met you. So when we have an experience like that with 40 or 50 people, now they're listening differently to, okay, now what do you want to teach us? Because that was moving and I can't even tell you why, but like something happened there. So there is a magic to it that I think we utilize and rely on, because when people feel that sense, even if they can't describe or don't have the words for what the heck just happened, they're compelled and they want more of it. And while we're keeping them in that space, we can educate them. We can help them. We can help provide tools so that they can do certain things that they couldn't do before from a special place because they're enthralled.
So one window in, it sounds like, was, laying some groundwork with getting people just listening differently initially, right?
Well, it was huge.
And for the benefit of our audience here, can you tell us a little bit about the Vulnerability is Sexy game so that people understand what that is?
Sure. We started as a book writing company and realized very quickly that we were not the traditional book writing company. We really were focused on the book that someone is born to write. So if you're writing just an informational book, we were probably not necessarily the right group for you. But if you're somebody who you really wanted to share your story and educate and inform while doing it, that was our niche. And we found that what people would tell us in the first 3 months was different than what they would start sharing around the 6th month, when they, the things that they'd never told their spouse before, the 7th month, things they'd never told themselves before. And each step of the way, we had to create a deeper and deeper sense of trust so that they would push to that next deeper level of awareness in themselves and their own story. And that's a very expensive process for someone to go through. And we were challenged to say, how do we create something for more people?
Yeah.
And our first answer to that was the vulnerability wall, which we would then take to events and give people an opportunity to to share something anonymously and then see it. It was something anonymous that they often felt guilt or shame about. And then it would be reflected back to them as a piece of beauty on this wall of art. And that's this moment for them to decide, which story do I want to carry forward with? And then, but that's still not cheap. I mean, we'd send artists around the country and, things like that. So then we said, okay, well, what if we created a game, right? With a specific set of rules that helped people to lean forward and listen without a need to respond, just to be with each other as we're answering these difficult questions. And we created a deck of cards and started bringing it around to events and had some really magical experiences. And we still use it to this day. Jen and I lead a vulnerability is sexy game night on Clubhouse every Tuesday night for a couple of hours and love it dearly.
Yeah. Yeah. So we'll have all of this in the show notes too, so that if people are curious and interested, they can join you, right?
Love it. Absolutely.
Yeah. Great. So tell us, where did it go from there? This was the birth, right? Of the course, of the first course, right?
Yeah. We kept rolling it out, right, to their associates. We put 150 of them through it in 2021 and kept going into 2022. But then we realized we need to get this to more people. And so we actually moved Jen over from all the other things that she was doing at our company to really help focus on the academy. And then we started offering it then we started preparing a version of it for the public, which had some variations to it. And that was a pretty big lift, but we were very excited to help put that together. And then we started those cohorts in January. We'll launch our fourth one of those in June. And then we've got some variations of those courses later this year, some that Jen is teaching, some I'm teaching, some we'll do together. And then we've got some cool, fun announcements.
Aha. So it's expanding, and depending on who you're appealing to, there are different courses in the academy.
So we have a couple of flagship courses. Every course follows a similar path of using journal prompts and moving through the hero's journey to uncover a very specific story from our own lives.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very experiential process that happens in community, which I think is extremely unique and important. So we have a Women in Story course starting in September, because there's a certain sacredness, I think, that comes with women's stories in particular, especially as they relate to their roles and responsibilities and expectations in the world. So we are bringing together a class of all women just to sort of untangle some of that and figure out, what does it look like when we figure out where we begin in others' end? And we're very, very excited about that. We have our classic, our original course, if you will, that follows through the hero's journey from childhood and kind of sort of a choose your own adventure type of experience, depending on where the prompts take you. And that's the course that you were in. And we have a couple of those throughout the summer as well. And Corey has a new one starting in June. Mm-hmm. Corey, do you want to share the big fun announcement part?
So our big excited one, we were going to do a version of the course that you went through, Tammy, that's about 11 weeks to help people uncover the book they're born to write. Yeah. We still love that idea, but our concern was that by the end of that, they wouldn't actually have a finished product. They'd probably have an outline and a really strong understanding of what that book wanted to be. And so we were literally just the other day, we made the decision that we're going to offer a full year-long experience for people to write the book that they're born to write. The first 3 months will be very similar to what you went through, with a little bit of structural change, but really about unearthing the primary themes of your life that the universe has guided you to be of service to the world around. then there's so much that, I mean, we've been doing books for 16 years. So there's so much that we'll offer in terms of a community experience all the way through, with some elements of coaching, probably some elements of editorial support at various points, and all kinds of additional add-on webinar content, really around all, the aspects from, Jen's expertise with building a social media following. We have all kinds of expertise with building thought leadership platforms, the stuff that we do with Dory Clark's community, right? All the learning to get published in high profile publication, all the things that an author needs to really be thinking about throughout the whole journey, all the way through, how do you determine whether you're going to self-publish, hybrid publish, traditional publish, you're going to write a book proposal, what's your book cover going to look like, how are you going to promote your book, how are you going to launch your book, all of that stuff.
Wow.
We will be playing with
that
over the full course of a year.
Phenomenal. I mean, wonderful. They didn't tell me about this ahead of time.
No, this was our surprise.
That is so exciting. And I can't think of two people who are better equipped to put this out into the world. So one thing I just have to tell my audience is that I am really privileged both to have taken this course, but also I worked with Jen for over a year on my book. She was my writing coach, and I knew Corey before that. And because I had such a high regard for everything I knew he was up to, I went to him and said, I want to work with RTC and support me in my book writing process. So I say this not to plug RTC, although I do think they're wonderful, but really because I had Jen for a year, but I had RTC on my side. And this program that you're talking about, the book You're Born to Write, I if that's what you're calling it, this sounds phenomenal. I know what I got in the time I worked with Jen on my book. And whoever decides they're going to join with you in this process, they are going to be very, very fortunate to be working with you, because there's so much to writing a book, right? It's not just about putting a book out in the world. It's about getting to know yourself in ways you never imagined and discovering those parts of yourself, but also then being able to put that out into the world in a way that you could never imagine. And letting the ripples go out and seeing what happens, and to have that kind of support and love surrounding you, because RTC is a very love-oriented company. It really is. This is phenomenal. What a great announcement. And thank you for sharing that today, because I encourage anyone who is considering writing a book to contact Corey or Jen and discuss this possibility, because you would be held and challenged at the same time. That's the thing I can really say is there's no stone unturned. I'm just so excited to hear about this.
Thank you for your energy. It's really exciting to hear reflected back.
It is. And this is not a paid announcement. A big part of what this podcast is about, Work from the Inside Out, is about bringing the best of your internal self into the outside world and listening to that internal voice of who you are, genuinely listening to that and becoming who you are at your best self, wherever you are in your life, that's what I'm all about. And so, one thing I was going to ask you today was, what does that mean to be the hero of your own story? Because I was perplexed when I started the course with you. It's like, the hero of my own story. What does that mean? A hero? I'm not like, Batwoman, or I'm not Superwoman. I'm just somebody who's trying to do some good in the world. And I have, ups and downs in my past like anyone else. But what does that mean, hero of my own story? I'm not saving lives or anything, So once we took a deeper dive into the hero's journey, and I had already been introduced to the hero's journey, Joseph Campbell's work, earlier through another course I had done, but this time I got a much better understanding of it. But still, how does that connect for you, and how do you bring that to your students?
I think we have such a limited view of heroism and courage.
Yes.
Really, right? Like it's what we see on the news. It's the big stories that we hear about. And like you said, it's like the movies, what's depicted is this grand act that has to happen all the time. And I think what we overlook is that there's so much courage and heroism in trying to save a broken marriage, in taking care of elderly parents, of climbing out of financial debt, of making new friends, if that's hard for you, right? Of moving to a new city, of being a parent. This is also holy ground. That is also courage, and that is also immensely heroic to take those steps in our everyday life. And because we don't tend to see it or recognize it, we very easily become confined to isolation and see only that courage and heroism in other people.
Yeah. It's always easy to see it in someone else, right?
Sure. We don't see it in the mirror every day when we get up. Mm-hmm. And our sincerest hope is that everyone comes to these classes with the same question: is my story worthy? And the answer is, of course, because it's yours and you are the only one to have lived this story, the only one who can experience this life through your perspective. And I think what's really beautiful for us to watch is oftentimes people come to our class and share what they consider ordinary stories. But that ordinary story is also someone else's ordinary story that makes them now feel less alone. And now you've created connective tissue between people, and now you've created community, and now you've created a sense of belonging in a world that can feel really isolating.
Absolutely. You nailed that. That was, yeah. I certainly experienced that in the course myself, and not just in the course, but going beyond. Definitely. You were right, Corey. She really, boy, did she catch. She put that in a bottle and sell it.
I know. Usually I try and go first and I get really wordy, and then I shut up and she says something magical and I go, I should just shut up.
Well, though, it's you're each other's yin to yang or something like that, but you do complement each other beautifully, I think. And you each bring a different texture to the picture, but it's both very valuable. Before we wrap up, there are a couple of other things that you are offering, some actually, let's say, complementary offerings that people can avail themselves of. Can you tell us about those?
Absolutely. Our something that we've learned over our 16 years as an organization is we tend to do things that are hard to talk about, but that once people experience, then it changes the conversation. And so we created a purpose workshop that in less than 60 minutes, people can have a magical experience that unearths a deeply authentic personal purpose statement of what is the driving motivation of their life. So, and that's something that people can do at no cost. We just offer that to the world, and we hope that people will jump into that. It's called My Powerful Purpose. And then we have a couple of mini courses. We actually have 4 mini courses that we're offering that'll be launched just by the time that this podcast is live. We have one that's the Hero's Journey Crash Course. We have one specifically on vulnerability and psychological safety. Right, we have beyond active listening. We've all heard the terms active listening, and there are techniques that take that to the next level, and we share those. And then there's a mini course on asking powerful questions, which positions a participant as being a co-creator in storytelling that manifests in the world and in their life, whether that's with their spouse or if it's part of their profession, if they're an executive coach or a therapist, et cetera, or a podcast host. Like, you're asking anyone who's asking questions, right? There's a way to help the person sitting across from you to express themselves in a way that they hadn't yet accessed before. And of course, whenever we can be a co-creator in someone expressing a new version of their story that gives them deeper access to who they are, then if there's an audience, that's a very moving experience for an audience to be watching. If it's private, right, and it's shared right there, it's something that both parties get to take away. So we are working with people to support them in those skills.
Well, that's enormously generous, and I want to, shine a light on that also for my audience of those of you who are in the midst of your own career transition or considering either putting, really reforming or reinventing yourselves, looking for that next role. These are courses, whether you decide to enroll in something bigger or take advantage of some of these beautiful complementary offerings. These are all things that you can use, whether you're networking or going into a job interview. Can you imagine dazzling someone interviewing you in a job with a great, powerful question and getting your interviewer to reflect on their experience in their company? Believe me, they will remember you as a candidate if you ask them a great question. I'm telling you.
We'll have to give it to you for the show notes, but Kelsey Schurer, who is behind the scenes and helped us to create all the written aspects of the course over the past couple of years, she's got 2 pieces right now in Harvard Business Review on storytelling as part of the interview process, whether you are interviewing at a new organization or, in her latest piece that was just published is on interviewing internally for another position.
Oh, perfect.
How does storytelling support that?
Oh, excellent.
Beautiful pieces.
That's great. Yeah, definitely. I have a subscription. I can probably find them too, but definitely. Yeah. These are the kinds of things that a lot of people really need to be thinking about. So this is great. Anything else before we wrap up? Do we capture?
As you said, we like to challenge people. I'm curious if you could articulate for your own audience, what is one way that you feel like you understand yourself differently after experiencing this 11 weeks of Inquisition?
Okay. The Inquisition. Thank you, Corey. I will say that I experience myself differently in that I think that I have removed a layer of Teflon or a layer of saran wrap or something. Not that I'm advertising saran wrap. Let's say plastic wrap. But I would say that, and it's not to say that like I became some, raw version of myself in this course, but I definitely allowed myself and really felt safe and comfortable with the group and with both of your facilitation and leadership to really take a look at some parts of my story. And, and really, I was just telling my story. I didn't realize what was going to surface. I really trusted the process and wanted to experience it as fully as I could. And so I didn't try to block things out. I just tried to see what would show up. But I think as a result, I tried to stay present to what would surface, and also have decided as a result of that to not put those walls back up and just to realize those are parts of my story. And that's part of who I was, who I take forward with me. And those are things that allow me to be cued into other people and to be of service. And it's just, to me, even when you have things in your past that are painful or joyful, any of them, they're all part of the fullness of life. And life is a very full place. And I know what it feels like when I've been shut down. And that's the worst thing of all. That's when you really get into trouble. So I just appreciated that unfolding and that opening up of story. And I know that I'm going to be a better storyteller now as a result. And I love, love, love telling stories. So, I mean, real stories, not just like being like a liar. I don't mean that kind of storyteller. You know what I mean? Like, hey, you're telling a story now. I don't mean that kind of story.
It's a tagline. We make better liars.
Yeah, I'm a better liar now. No, I love the unfolding of a story and how it really brings things to life and allows people to live a fuller life, because life is such a full place with all its elements. And the way that the two of you brought your full selves to that as well, that really added to the richness of the experience. And I'm so grateful to both of you for that. And thank you so much for being here on Work from the Inside Out. I'm just so excited to hear the responses to this episode today.
Thank you so much, Tam. And I do want to acknowledge one of the things that I enjoyed watching most was the sincerity and the tenderness that you brought in response to other people's stories.
Oh,
you were so lovely in the way that you were able to support people.
Well, it was a joy. It really was. I loved it. And I'm excited to stay connected to people too. That's the other benefit of the way that it was crafted. What a wonderful group. So thank you.
Thank you, Tam. What a pleasure. Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Tam.
I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Corey, Blake, and Gen Georget of the Roundtable Companies. It was so much fun to speak with them about their development of the Roundtable Storytelling Academy and their work with clients on their professional journeys. What is your key takeaway from our interview? If you are interested in any of the resources mentioned in today's podcast, you can find them on the show notes page of my website at tammygoularloeb.com. Just look for episode 178. Are you thinking about what your next professional move is going to be? Maybe you're just feeling a little stuck. I encourage you to pick up my new book, Work from the Inside Out, Break Through 9 Common Obstacles and Design a Career that Fulfills You. It's available in print and ebook editions through my website, Amazon Worldwide, Barnes & Noble, independent bookstores, and your local public library. If you were inspired by this episode with Corey and Jen, please share it with your friends and colleagues. And please subscribe so you don't miss next week's show. Remember, subscribing is always free. If you're enjoying the podcast, I'd really appreciate your written review on Apple Podcasts. It's easy to find through my website at tammygoularloeb.com/podcast. Just click on the Apple Podcast button and follow the instructions provided there. Thank you so much for listening. And remember, it's never too late or too impossible to increase your sense of fulfillment and satisfaction in your work and other meaningful activities. I'd love to hear how it's going for you. Feel free to drop me a line. Bye for now.
Thank you for listening to the Work from the Inside Out podcast. For more information, you can find us at www.workfromtheinsideout.com.